to think differently than Jesus? And it didn't take long for him to say, well, Jesus was just a man. You don't think the apostles believed that Jesus was God, do you? Yes, actually, I do. Yeah, I've defended that many times. And their writings are really unequivocal on that subject. So, I saw this book was coming out, and so I pre-ordered it. And obviously I've had only a few minutes to even glance at it since I got in this morning with everything else I've been doing. But it's always okay to go to the end of the book. Why not? There was a time in the story of the church when the full humanity of Jesus was dearly held as a bulwark against what was perceived to be alien articulations of the Christian story. Christ is fully human. Christ is not some admixture of divine and human so as to make him a third being. Well, so much of this is just the fuller way of saying one thing without saying what you really want to mean, except sort of toward the end of the paragraph or something. Because obviously, there were a number of Christological errors that were rejected, such as the idea of Jesus being 50% God and 50% man, a demigod. All the discussion of Apollinarianism, Eutychianism, and Nestorianism, and all the Christological controversies of the 4th century were about maintaining a biblical balance. A biblical balance. If you go this way, well, you're going to be violating this. If you go that way, you're going to be violating that. And so, yes, Christ is not some admixture of divine and human so as to make him a third being. Nor is the Christ some spiritual element that descends upon the earthly Jesus only to abandon him at the end. Gnosticism. Thus, from a Christian theological perspective, every point I've made in this book must be true. Everything that Jesus is and does, he does as a human being and is demonstrative of his humanness. No, that's not what the historical perspective was. That is an imbalanced reading of that, but it's not an accurate reading of that. There is the absolute necessity of confessing the reality of the humanity of Christ, and not just as a phantom, not as an admixture of things, but that does not change the reality of the hypostatic union. That does not change the reality of the fact that the most primitive traditions of the New Testament, to even use that kind of language, identify Jesus in the most exalted fashion possible, often by using both divine and human language. Now, I was starting to look at what he was doing with Mark. Standard, leftist, the level of bias is amazing. It's a big book, but liberals write lots of big books, and unbelieving liberals write lots of big books, as this is. This does not mean, of course, that every point I have made is exegetically accurate in the literary or historical sense. Well, that's always a interesting statement to make. I'll take that. You're exactly right. You blew a bunch of them. Indeed, I've set as my primary conversation partners those who see evidence that the other dogmatically true statement, not historically true, dogmatically true statement about Jesus is also evinced throughout the Synoptic Gospels, that everything Jesus is and does, he is and does as one who is fully God, no less than fully human. So he's saying, I'm rejecting that. That's the position I am arguing against. And I think that's the historically Christian position? Yeah, it is. Okay. The purpose of this book has been to offer a reading that shows how the first can be exegetically sound in a historical critical sense, without the second receiving similar affirmation. Do you see why Daniel Kirk will be the absolute new favorite of the Muslim propaganda? Well, of a certain element of the Muslim Dawah movement. I'll be perfectly honest with you. The majority of the Muslim Dawah movement will not understand him. This is not airman level stuff. Take that back. This is not Bart Ehrman's popularist level stuff. Ehrman writes scholarly stuff. Doesn't write a lot of it, but he writes scholarly stuff, mainly articles, not so much books. And then he writes the popular level stuff. And it's interesting to me that most Muslims glom onto the popular level stuff, not the scholarly stuff. And a lot of this is just not going to be, I'm sorry, it's just not going to be overly understandable to a non-seminary trained person. Just the reality of the fact. But the conclusions and stuff, oh, they're going to love it. Because basically, you know, as he said to me, and as needs to be fully understood, this man is not an Orthodox Christian by any stretch of the imagination. And what he just said here is, look, I'm offering a reading. See, whenever you hear that, you must understand what it means in scholarese. I'm offering a reading. In other words, there isn't any one particular truth in the New Testament. I'm just offering a reading. Well, that says a lot about your view of Scripture. It says a lot about what your presuppositions are. And by the way, for all you Muslims that are going to glom onto him, what do you do with people who offer a reading of the Quran? Maybe it offers a reading of the Quran that doesn't require you to believe that Muhammad's a prophet. Doesn't require you to believe in the Isra and the Miraj. Doesn't require you to believe in all sorts of other things like that. You fine with that? If you're not, don't be a hypocrite and use this stuff. That's not going to stop all but maybe two of you. That's my experience, sadly. Anyway, the paradigm of Jesus as an idealized human figure contains such rich possibilities that nothing of what we see in the Synoptic Gospels demands a divine Christology, and few things point strongly in such a direction. Now, of course, I would say it is grossly heretical to present Jesus as merely a idealized human figure either. That's not the true historical Jesus. And by the way, that's not what Muslims believe either, but you're going to ignore that too, aren't you? Oh, yes, you will. Oh, yes, you will. You know you will. Folks, real simple. Fuller jumped the shark a long time ago, unfortunately. And I say this as a graduate of Fuller Seminary. But that was 1989. Long time ago. Okay. All right, Eric. I'll do it this way. There are good people teaching at Fuller. There are good Christian students at Fuller, but I feel sorry for them. Simple fact of the matter is, I don't think the leadership of Fuller Seminary is going to care